Hey, what's going on, guys? So Plague is back, and I figured I'd cover a solo guide doing Plague Star because I know a lot of people play solo, and even if you're not solo, this guide will probably help you queue up for those public missions because with this build and with how I'm doing this, I'm able to do 10-minute missions very consistently. And the way you're able to do this is by using a Speedva with the Sobek and Acid Shells, as well as a Brakk, and if you want to, a Sarpa for stripping armor, although typically when I do this, I do not strip armor. Now, I'm going to show a run, and I'm going to talk about it, and then I'll show the builds at the end of the video, guys. So if you're not aware, you can start the Plague Star mission from either inside Asidus at Kanzu or at one of the huts inside the Plains of Eidolon. You're also able to re-queue from the huts inside the Plains of Eidolon, so if you want to do multiple missions in a row, just know that you can re-queue from there. Although you can only bring 10 of each of the Eidolon Phalanxes and the Infested Catalyst into each mission. So you'll have to leave and come back if you want to refresh those supplies. The missions themselves are super straightforward. There are 4 parts. The first part, you have to pick up the infested toxin from one of the Grenier caves around the map, which will be random each time. So typically I'll wait in the center of the map and then go to whichever cave it spawns at. You know, you're not really saving a lot of time by going to one cave or the other, especially if you're solo. If you're in a group, then you can do that, but solo players, you know, it's just easier to wait and see. Once you've gone to the cave and picked up the toxin canister, that's the first stage done. The second stage consists of a defense where you'll have to input the canister and then use your Eidolon Phalanxes and Infested Catalyst to increase the difficulty of the mission, which will then reward you with more rep. So every time you want to be doing this, you know, if you don't have enough built, then you don't have to, but it will only reward you with 2,000 versus the 3,000 that you get each mission that's fully completed with all 4 of each. And for those of you paying attention at home, that means that 1 run equals 1 forma at the operational supply rep, which you can see so far I have about 60 from the event. One of the main reasons to run this in a group is to share your Eidolon Phalanxes and Catalysts because that's going to be the biggest drain on your resources. Like for me, someone who doesn't have very many nanospores because I make a lot of pads, and queuing up a public mission and relying on my teammates to, you know, put a couple in by themselves is going to save me a lot of resources in the long run. Which, like I said, this is going to work for both solo as well as group players. And this part of the mission is probably one of the most difficult decisions you have to make in Plague Star, and that's because you have to figure out what YouTube video to watch during the 3-minute defense. Because, as you can see, you just sit there. If you don't leave the vault and just sit inside like this, the enemies typically don't attack. I'm also running Bazarin here, which means that I can heal the console whenever I want to and make it immune to damage. So by doing this, you don't ever have to actually defend the point, if you don't want to. You know, if you want to defend the point, then be my guest. But it's honestly a complete waste of your time, and you're much better off, you know, doing the laundry, watching a YouTube video, like literally anything else besides wasting 3 minutes watching this defense go by. Anyways, after the defense is over, this is where Nova's wormhole comes into play, because you're able to wormhole the drone across the map. This does take a little bit of practice, and I'm honestly not the best at this, as you'll see, but if you're able to do it properly, then it can save you lots of time getting the drone to the boil, which I'm sure if you've played this at all, you'll know is one of the longest drains on the mission itself. If you don't have a Nova or a Loki to teleport the drone, then it can be very frustrating. But we're using Nova here instead of Loki because you can also increase the speed at which the Hemocytes leave the boil, which you'll see in a second. So once the drone reaches the boil, the last stage of the Plague Star will come into play. During this stage, assuming you put in all 4 Infested Catalysts, you're going to get 4 Hemocytes, which is what you want if you want to get the maximum rep for the mission, which you should absolutely do. And I know that there's some people that recommend not putting any catalysts in, but you don't actually save any time, and you're just wasting your own time if you don't do it. To get the Hemocytes to spawn, you have to kill the infested that are around the boil. You can see in the top left corner there's an infested purged counter that'll go from 0 to 100%. Every 25%, a Hemocyte spawns. So basically you just want to make sure that you get that percentage up as fast as possible, because once it reaches 25%, 50%, 75%, it's going to pause the timer while the game waits for you to kill the Hemocyte. So to accomplish this quickly with Nova, I'm using the Sobek here with Acid Shells. Acid Shells deals a % health damage in an AoE to enemies around the enemy you just killed. So by killing one enemy with your Sobek, you can trigger a giant explosion with the Sobek plus the Molecular Prime, which also increases the damage dealt to the enemies. You don't have to use the Sobek here if you don't want to. I know Novus 2 also works for this. I've just found that the Sobek works pretty well for this, and it's what I recommend. And because we're playing as Speedva here, when we cast our Molecular Prime, the enemies get a 60% increase to their speed, which also helps the Hemocyte move out of the boil. Now, I'm sure if you've done this, you've noticed that the Hemocytes have very short vulnerability phases, and because we've increased their animation speed, this also decreases the time we have to shoot the Hemocytes, which isn't a huge deal, but if you use the Amesha slow, which is the Amesha's third ability, if you're not aware, you cast it once to activate it and cast it another time to deactivate it, you're able to slow the enemy by 80%. Of course, assuming that you have the same build that I have all the stuff unlocked as well as the Railjack intrinsics. But if you're not fully kitted out, it should work very, very similar to this anyways. But once they become vulnerable, you just shoot them with a high pellet count, corrosive-based weapon. The two I would recommend for this are the Kuva Brakk with either innate toxin or electricity, or a Pyrana Prime modded for corrosive damage. There are a few other weapons that work here, but those are the ones I'd recommend. You just want high pellet count and corrosive damage. Those are the two main things. And of course, I also have a Sarpa in my loadout that allows me to strip the base armor if I want to. Oftentimes I'm too lazy to do it, even though it is faster technically. I just don't find myself doing it that often, but I want to recommend it just in case you need that extra bit of damage, assuming you don't have as good a weapon as I do. And you might notice here that I'm taking out the enemies very quickly to get the next Hemocyte up, and in a mission with other people that's not going to happen as fast typically. Solo, it's actually easier to get all the invested around like this to pop them. But as you can see with the damage against the Hemocytes, even with full armor, the corrosive build does really well. If I had lower damage, then I would probably be stripping the armor with the Sarpa more often. But even with that, I got about, 8 minutes on my mission time here. And typically I get about 10-minute mission times, depending on a variety of factors, where the toxin spawns or where the drone spawns. Anyways, now that you've seen me do the mission, let's take a look at my builds. So starting out with the Nova Prime build, I have Power Donation, which is very important for the negative strength. So in mission, it says I have 40 strength. Here, I'm actually at 10% strength, which gives me the speed boost. So you want Power Donation if you can. Other than negative strength, what I'm going for here is range and efficiency. Duration's not bad, but it's not that important because we're not using our Null Star to prevent damage, and Molecular Prime's duration is going to last for 30 seconds with 100%. As for survivability, I have Adaptation and Vitality with an Arcane Guardian for a little bit of armor. Because Nova Prime has really low base armor, having the extra armor from Guardian is a lot of effective health. The other mods I have here are Continuity, which is just to keep my duration above 100%. Overextended for the range, obviously, and the negative strength. It's very important to get the negative strength here. Stretch for range. Streamline and Fleeting Expertise for efficiency. I'm running a -1 rank Fleeting Expertise because I'm reaching the 175% efficiency needed to max that out. And then the last mod here I have is Vigorous Swap. Vigorous Swap helps out a lot with damage, especially if you're in the air with the Amesha and you need a little bit extra damage. You can swap between weapons real quick to get the extra damage against the Hemocyte. And this is more prevalent when I'm not stripping the armor off. If you're in a group, then maybe it's not that important because other people will be shooting as well. And then as for my aura, I already mentioned Power Donation, as well as Cunning Drift for a little bit extra range. You can swap out the Exila slot for something else if you want to. You'll also notice on the side here I have Arcane Energize. If you don't have an Arcane Energize, which I totally understand, it's very expensive. Running another Guardian here is totally fine. I just have this to maintain my energy. If you don't have an Energize, then I would recommend either having more pads for energy in the mission or running Xenoric for energy instead of Vazarin. Honestly, even with Energize, I've debated running Xenoric just for the energy regen, but I like Vazarin more, and if I get a couple energy orb drops, then Arcane Energize keeps me up pretty well. The next build I have here is the Sobek build. This is pretty basic. It's just damage, multi-shot, and status with viral and radiation. I like the radiation because it disables the infested enemy auras if they become an issue, which they really don't because the enemies are pretty low level overall. And then of course I have acid shells here, which gives me the explosions on death, which is what we really care about. I don't find the viral and radiation absolutely needed, but you can if you want to. And of course I have Shattering Justice here, which is the Sobek mod that gives me the Justice proc, which is the radial AoE proc that goes off with the faction. Next build I have here is a Kuva Brakk. This is a non-Riven build for the Kuva Brakk. I'm running Hornet Strike for damage, Pistol Gambit and Target Cracker here for crit chance, crit damage, pretty basic. Barrel Diffusion for multi-shot, and then I have Convulsion and Pathogen rounds to create Corrosive. It's very important to create Corrosive on your weapon. I know some people think that Radiation is going to be better with the infested armor, but it's actually not. Even if the enemy has full armor, you want to go corrosive damage. Okay, just corrosive damage. There is a potential argument for blast if you've stripped all the armor off, but I wouldn't recommend that unless you're in an organized group. And then the last 2 mods here I have are Lethal Torrent, again more multi-shot, and Primed Expel Infested. If you don't have the Prime version of this, I would run the normal version, and that's because it's a separate multiplier to your damage. So this is going to give me an extra 1.55 times multiplier to whatever damage I'm already dealing to the Hemocytes. As for the Exilus slot, I have Steady Hands. You can really run whatever you want in the Exilus. And last but not least, so I have the Sarpa for my weapons, Shattering Impact, Prime Fury, Gladiator Vice, the Amalgam Organ Shatter, and Killing Blow for some attack speed, and I also have an attack speed Riven. I have like super attack speed here. You don't need necessarily this much. I do like running the heavy attack wind-up speed mods, just in case I heavy attack with a Sarpa, and this lets me do that faster. You just want to be very fast at applying the Shattering Impact procs, which are going to reduce the enemy's base armor. As for my focus school, I'm running Vazarin, as I mentioned earlier, for Protective Dash. Protective Dash is one of the best things in the entire game. It makes things immune for 5 seconds and heals them for 60% of their total health, which is just stupid. If you want to run a different school, then you can run Zenric. Also very good for Energizing Dash, just to keep your energy up with Nova. And as for companions, you can run whatever you want. I have a Smeedakavat here, but that's mostly just because I hate taking things out of stasis, because the stasis system sucks. The Adarza will help you with the crit chance if you want to do that. And the last thing I have is my Archwing, which is the Amesha. As I told you before, I'm only using Warning Grace. Occasionally I'll use Watchful Swarm for the damage reduction, but mostly I'm just using Warning Grace for the slow on the Hemocytes. And this is the build. Its health, armor, system reroute is one of the more important mods because it gives me the efficiency I need. Because this paired with my intrinsic is going to give me maxed out efficiency on my Archwing. Hyperion Thrusters is just speed, so, this lets me get to the points faster. Kinetic Diversion is just rage for Archwings, and it's good to have, not super necessary. Auxiliary Power is going to give me more energy. Energy Amplifier is more range, and then Prime Morphic Transformer is for the ability Strength. If you don't have the Prime version, then the normal version will work as well, but the more strength you have, the better your slow is, so you want to have strength on this build if you can. But that does it for the whole video. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments below. I hope this helped you understand what I'm building for and why, as well as like how to solo the mission by yourself. I think that Nova is the best option for this, and this is the build that I would recommend. But at the end of the day, it's up to you what frame you play and how you play the game. So that's going to do it for me, guys. Hope you're all having a good one, and I'll see you later.